Hello everyone, my name is Albina Kassenova. I'm a teacher trainer at the National Center for Professional Development, Өрлеу. And today I'm going to present you the first podcast about CLIL. So as you know, CLIL topic is very important in our country. This is the first podcast about 4 Cs of CLIL. So the 4 Cs framework integrates 4 contextualized building blocks. Content, it means subject matter, communication, language learning and using, cognition, learning and thinking processes, and culture, developing intercultural understanding and global citizenship. In doing so, it takes account of integrating content learning and language learning within specific contexts and acknowledges the symbiotic relationship that exists between these elements. It suggests that effective CLIL takes place as a result of this symbiosis through progression in knowledge, skills and understanding of the content, engagement in associated cognitive processing, interaction in communicative context, development of appropriate language knowledge and skills, and the acquisition of a deepening intercultural awareness, which is in turn brought by the positioning of self or otherness. In the CLIL classroom, it's unlikely that the language level of the learners will be the same as their cognitive level. This might give rise to mismatches where either the language level is too difficult or too easy when set against the cognitive level. If the language level is too demanding, then arguably effective learning cannot take place. If the cognitive level is too low, taking into account the language level, then learning is restricted. Whatever the capacity of learners, effective learning demands cognitive engagement at the appropriate level for individuals. So as you can see on our presentation, there is a really interesting statement by Smith and Patterson. So, ensuring that learners will be cognitively challenged yet linguistically supported to enable new dialogic learning to take place requires strategies and principled planning. As has already I said, it involves analyzing in depth the type of the language needed for effective learning. We suggest that an adapted version of comments in 1984 model, as you can see on the slide, the CLIL matrix might be helpful in balancing linguistic and cognitive demands. Before exploring the first step, it is useful to briefly revisit the 4 Cs framework. Its 4 major components can be summarized as follows. As you can see, the first component is content. So, at the heart of the learning process lies successful content or thematic learning and the related acquisition of new knowledge, skills and understanding. Content is the subject or the CLIL theme. It doesn't have to be part of a discrete curriculum discipline such as, for example, math or history. It can be drawn from alternative approaches to curriculum involving cross-curricular and integrated studies. It is useful to think of content in terms of the knowledge, skills, and understanding we wish our learners to access on our CLIL lessons, rather than simply knowledge acquisition. So that was the first component, the first C. And as you can see, there is a second component, communication. What about communication? Let's discuss that. Language is conduit for communication and for learning, which can be described as learning and using language to learn. Communication in this sense goes beyond the grammar system, but at the same time doesn't reject the essential role of grammar and lexis in language learning. It involves learners in using language in a way which is often different from more traditional language lessons. Of course, CLIL involves learners in learning language too, but in a different way. So it perhaps useful here to differentiate between language learning, which is often with an emphasis on grammatical progression, and language using, with an emphasis on the communication and learning demands at the moment. So again, language learning and language using. There are similarities with the kind of language approaches which influence content-based instruction, CBI, or task-based instruction, TBI, and EAL, English as an additional language, in our case is English. All these approaches explore to different degrees and with different emphasis the relationship between language learning and the language and the content within which it is situated. CLIL integrates content learning and language learning, so both are very important. So the third component of CLIL is cognition, the third C. For CLIL to be effective, it must challenge learners to create new knowledge and develop new skills through reflection and engagement in higher order as well as lower order thinking. CLIL is not about the just transfer of knowledge from an expert to a novice. CLIL is about allowing individuals to construct their own understandings and to be challenged, whatever their age or ability. A useful taxonomy to guide planning for cognitive challenges is that of Anderson or Krathwohl, since it explores the relationship between cognitive processing, it means learning, and language acquisition of content. Particularly relevant to CLIL, it is not suggested that taxonomies are rigidly followed, but rather that they serve as stimulus and reference for planning, discussion and evaluating practice. So that was third C, and now the last, fourth component, culture. Culture is not a postscript. It is a thread which weaves its way throughout any topic or theme, sometimes referred to as the forgotten C. It adds learning value to CLIL context, yet demands careful consideration. For our pluricultural, or how we say in Kazakhstan, multicultural and plurilingual or multicultural world to be celebrated and its potential realized, this demands tolerance and understanding. Studying through a different language is fundamental to fostering international understanding. If learners understand the concept of otherness, then this is likely to lead to a deeper understanding of self. It could be argued that in the CLIL classroom, the use of appropriate authentic materials and intercultural curricular linking can contribute to a deeper understanding of difference and similarities between cultures, which in turn impacts on discovering self. CLIL offers rich potential for developing notions of pluricultural citizenship and global understanding, but these need to be planned and transparent. Moreover, extending CLIL content to include intercultural understanding is not always obvious. It needs to be thought through to ensure meaningful connections rather than tokenistic reference. If there is a class-to-class link, for example, sister class, already connecting schools across different cultures, then including intercultural elements in project will be easier. In CLIL, culture can include extending the content, for example, the bicycle as a means of transport across the world, as a topic in technology class. Setting the context of the content in different cultures, for example, investigating patterns in Asian and European architecture in mathematics or design class. Discussing how learners in different cultures might approach the same content topic, for example, attitudes to recycling or exploring and interpreting the curriculum as a global citizen. From this perspective, CLIL involves learning to use language appropriately, whilst using language to learn effectively. It is built on the following principles. The first principle. Content matter is not only about acquiring knowledge and skills, it's about the learner creating their own understanding and developing skills. So it means kind of personalized learning. Content is related to learning and thinking cognition, to enable the learner to create their own interpretation of content. It must be analyzed for its linguistic demands. Third principle, thinking processes, cognition, need to be analyzed for their linguistic demands. Fourth principle, language needs to be learned which is related to the learning context, to learning through that language, to reconstructing the content, and to related cognitive processes. This language needs to be transparent and accessible. Interaction in the learning context is fundamental to learning. This has implications when the learning context operates through the medium of a foreign language. Sixth principle. The relationship between cultures and language is complex. Intercultural awareness is fundamental to CLIL. And the last one. CLIL is embedded in the wider educational context, which is it is developed and therefore must take account of contextualized variables in order to be effectively realized. So, wrapping up our podcast, I can say that all these 4 C's, 4 components of CLIL are very important when you're constructing or when you're planning your lesson plan. So it has to be in your mind when you plan your lesson, and it is desirable or recommended, yes, to use this and not to forget these 4 C's. Thank you very much for your attention. Let's see you in the next podcast.